number of students. It's quite an accomplishment, and we'd like to, as the city of Atwater, we would like to show our appreciation and let them know how much we appreciate them for what they've done. I'm going to try this, and I'm sure I'm going to butcher it. Anthony Bossaldua? Yeah. Hey, got it right. From Buhack Colony High School. He won the championship in the long jump. Next, from Buhack Colony High School, Barbara Coward for the shot put and discus competition. Vanessa Andrade for Buhack Colony High School in the 100-meter hurdles. I think they use sticky paper. Stefan Eastman? Is that right? Stefan, I apologize. From Buhack Colony High School, both championship in the high jump and the 200-meter. And then Jared Del Real for the shot put. Congratulations. You got a good grip too, yeah. Yeah, apparently, yeah. And the last one, Alex Vargas, Atwater High School for the 800-meter. He's not here? Are we missing one? Okay, so if you'd like to take some pictures, let's give these young individuals a round. They've done very well, and they've represented Atwater very well. Would anybody like to say anything? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Comments from the public. At this time, any person may comment on any item which is not on the agenda that is within the jurisdiction of the City Council. Please state your name and address for the record. Action will not be taken on an item that is not on the agenda. If it requires action, it will be referred to staff and/or placed on a future agenda. To comment on an item that is on the agenda, please wait until the item is read for consideration. Please limit comments to a maximum of 5 minutes.
Is there anybody that wishes to speak to the City Council at this time? Yes, sir. Please come to the podium and state your name for the record, please.
My name is Michael Pacheco. I've been a resident here in town for 19 years, and I'm here because of the condition of the city parks and the Veterans Park in particular. I've talked to several of you people about this already. Before Memorial Day, I went down to Veterans Park. I go there every couple of weeks to spend some time to contemplate those that we passed. And in the memorial, it says some gave some and some gave all, and that's the purpose of that memorial in the park. The city is short of funds, and the condition of the park, I was a little upset because it was a weekend, Memorial Day weekend. But I understand now that the city is short of funds and can't maintain them. I belong to the local chapter of Disabled American Veterans, Chapter 31, here in town. On Thursday last week, we had our monthly meeting, and I brought this up to them, and we decided that we would volunteer to the city to maintain it. The memorial itself in particular, and the park, if we can get the use of the city's big riding lawnmower. There are, being disabled veterans, you know, there's a limit to what we can do, but we can do what we are. So I brought this up at our meeting, and within 5 minutes, I had, counting myself, 7 volunteers to do this. We have our own yard tools, you know, household lawnmowers and stuff that we will use, And of course, if the city will provide the bigger lighting one, we can do the entire park. I would also propose, I talked to the mayor earlier today, and I proposed that the city reach out to other service organizations and see if you can get them to volunteer to adopt another park. In particular, the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, I know they have to do community service as a requirement of their being a member of those organizations, to maybe go through the parks periodically and pick up the trash, because the city people don't have the time to do it. Also, I know that there are juvenile delinquents and other people who have to do community service because of something they've done wrong, that maybe they could be channeled into this area also. And I'm also understanding that all the students in high school students are required to do a certain period of community service. And maybe the city would also, try to channel some of that into some of the other parks to take care of this, because it's a resource of the city and they need to be maintained. Thank you for your time, and God bless America.
Thank you, Mr. Pacheco. And thank you, sir, for your service. And Mr. Pacheco, you've been in contact with Mr. Peretta about this issue, have you not? Yes. Okay, thank you very much.
Mayor, may I?
Yes.
Mr. Pacheco, yes. You might talk to the people at Castlewood right across the street. I know I talked to that neighborhood watch about, they've shown an interest in possibly helping keep that park clean. Talk to me after the meeting if you can, and I'll try to put you in touch with that neighborhood watch.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to the council at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on with the agenda.
Consent calendar. Background information has been provided on all matters listed under the consent calendar, and these items are considered to be routine. All items under the consent calendar are normally approved by one motion. If discussion is requested on any item, that item will be removed from the consent calendar for separate action.
Are there any items on the consent calendar that the council would like to remove for separate action? Are there any members of the audience that would like to have any of the items on the consent calendar removed for any kind of discussion or possible action? Seeing none, entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Call for the question.
Vineyard?
Yes.
Bergman?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Price?
Yes.
Motion carries. Funding and budget matters. Treasurer's report for the months of March 2015 and April 2015.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilman. Before you are two treasurers' report.
Are there any questions for Mr. Heller? Hearing none, entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Call for the question.
Raymond?
Yes.
Bergman?
Yes.
Vineyard?
Yes.
Price?
Yes.
Motion carries. Public hearings. Adopting 2015-16 fiscal year budget and approving fund expenditures and fund transfers, and approving salary schedule A-16 effective July 1, 2015.
Mr. Petro.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council, I'm pleased to transmit to you the City of Atwater proposed budget for the fiscal year 2015-16. This document provides a comprehensive overview of the city's revenues as well as activities and programs for the 12-month period beginning July 1st, 2015. The proposed general fund budget for the fiscal year 15-16 is balanced with a projected revenues of $12.3 million available to the fund expenditures totaling $12.1. One major impact of the economic downturn was the depletion of the general fund revenues, as we all know. Mr. Zanoni will be doing a short presentation, and a very short presentation in regards to the overall budget. In closing, I would like to express my appreciation to all hard-working city staff for their dedication, their hard work, and contribution to the development of this balanced budget. I would also like to thank the City Council for providing positive leadership and direction as we continue to recover from the financial challenges of recent years. Mr. Zanoni.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I've got a very short presentation for you this evening that we'll go through fairly quickly and then open it up for questions. For the 2015-16 fiscal year, staff has been working on the budget for the last several months, actually going back to January when we started to put together revenue projections. The departments then spent several months putting their budget requests together, which were then reviewed by the city manager. City Council has held 2 budget workshops. First one on May 19th, the second one on May 27th, and at the May 27th public budget workshop, Council actually walked through the budget document page by page. So that was a fairly detailed review. What you have before you this evening excuse me, is a request to adopt the budget and also to approve the salary schedule for next fiscal year. For the total city budget for next fiscal year, the total appropriation request is $42.9 million. That is across all city funds. That encompasses, I believe, 22 different funds that the city breaks its revenues and expenditures down into. The main fund that we discussed was the city's general fund. That is the fund that supports some of the major, or at least a portion of some of the major activities in the city, a major portion of police, fire, recreation, and then a lot of the administrative costs of the city. The good news is that for 15-16 you have a balanced budget, and we have incorporated the changes that came out of the budget workshop last week. As with those changes, we have projected revenue next year of $12.4 million, requested expenditures of $12.3 million, and a operating surplus of $145,000, $145,581 to be precise, which is good news. As we reviewed during both of the last 2 workshops, that's definitely a step forward from the last several years. But I just want to again remind you that even though we have an operating surplus, or projecting an operating surplus next year, the general fund still has a negative fund balance of about $3.8 million. So the general fund is still negative with a negative fund balance, and where we should be according to the council's, or our target with the council's reserve policy, is we should have about a $1.8 million positive fund balance. So there's about a $5.5 million gap that we need to fill over time, but that's our target. The good news is, though, is right now the budget is balanced. In the general fund, some of the other significant funds in this budget are the Measure H fund. Measure H fund has projected revenue next year of $1,751,000. We have projected expenditures of $1.8 million. It's about $78,000, I believe, more in expenditures than revenues, and the reason for that is there's some one-time purchases requested for several police vehicles of about $80,000, and that will come out of the fund balance that's been accumulated in the Measure H fund. The Water Enterprise Fund has projected revenues of just under $3.8 million next year, projected expenditures of $4,354,000. Again, expenditures exceeding the revenue amount. What was causing that imbalance are several major capital projects that are in the capital improvement program, the largest one being, I believe, $850,000 for a well rehabilitation project. The wastewater or the sewer fund is doing well with revenue projections of just under 12.7 million and expenditures of about 10.6 million. Sanitation fund is another one of the enterprise funds, which has in past years been in a deficit position, and in fact we had to do an interfund loan to cover that because the revenues weren't keeping up with expenditures. For next year we're projecting revenue of 3.7 million and expenditures of 3.1 million. So the rate adjustments that the council approved several years ago are doing what they are supposed to be doing with these enterprise funds. Some of the other significant funds in the city, and I won't go through the details, but you did do that 2 weeks ago. The gas tax fund, which funds street and road work projects, employee benefits fund, equipment fund, the risk management fund, which funds city liability insurance and other insurance costs of the city, police grant fund, where we have several police positions funded, parks and recreation fund. So those are some of the other major funds that are included in the budget. As you also discussed during your previous budget workshops, staffing has been reduced significantly over the last several years. Between 2008-9 and 15-16, we are down about 52 positions, close to 40% in staffing from where we were in 2008-9. The budget that you have before you for consideration funds 82 full-time positions throughout the city across all funds. So the recommended action for this evening is to open the public hearing, receive public comment on the proposed budget. After you close the public hearing and whatever discussion the council chooses to have, it's requested that the council then adopt a joint authority resolution approving the budget for the 15-16 fiscal year. There's 3 separate resolutions, one for the City of Atwater, one for the Atwater Fire Protection District, and one for the successor agency to the redevelopment agency, because you sit as a body for all 3 of those entities. And then the last action would be to adopt a resolution approving the salary schedule for the 2015 fiscal year.
Any questions for Mr. Zanoni? Councilmember Raymond.
How much do we owe the enterprise fund in total from the general fund?
From the general fund, it is, I believe, $2.8 million. And this budget that you have before you includes the first repayment of that. We are right now proposing that be repaid over a 15-year period. Ideally, we'd be able to repay it sooner. But for the general fund, this budget has the first of 15 annual payments.
Bill, on the, I keep asking you this, and I keep hearing the same answer, and I don't expect it to be, yes, well, yes and no. But in any case, have we heard from Sacramento on our methodology?
We have not, and it has now been 2.5 months.
Yeah. And what will that do for our liabilities once we do get approval from?
Once we get direction from the State Controller's Office, and what you're referring to is the gas tax audit.
Yes.
Once we get direction from the State Controller's Office on the methodology that they will accept for calculation of overhead costs going back about 12 years, we'll have to go back and recalculate that. If that turns out that the gas tax, that there have been ineligible gas tax overhead charges, then that will increase the general fund negative fund balance.
Right.
So it won't have an immediate impact on the general fund, but it will increase that $3.8 million could increase it to a larger number.
Right. And for those that are questioning what that is, this is as a result of the audit that the folks from Sacramento came down and did last year, and this is our obligation to pay back. Councilmember Raymond.
Are we borrowing from any of the enterprise funds to cover our general fund payments at this point?
Well, the general fund has negative cash.
Right.
And you've seen that in the treasurer's
Yes.
report tonight. So, so that on a cash basis, the general fund has borrowed money from the wastewater sewer fund.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Mr. Zanoni? Councilmember Bergman.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Zanoni, on the Measure H fund, I know the expenditures show more than revenue. What is the projected carryover from this fiscal year into the next?
The projected carryover for the Measure H fund is $402,000.
Thank you.
Well, the one thing that I'm sorry, Councilmember Raymond.
One more question. For the wastewater fund, in 2007, I want to say, I could be wrong, the state had passed a law or a resolution that said that cities, municipalities were not allowed to charge more than the cost of the service to provide the service. Mm-hmm. So how are we getting the increase in revenue from our expenditures?
Well, the Foreign Enterprise Fund, when this city does, and the city just completed one 2 years ago, a rate study, a cost of service analysis, and what goes into that is looking at current, and this looked out 5 years, so current and projected operating costs, as well as current and projected capital needs. So you identify what it is going to take to operate the enterprise fund, in that case the sewer fund, but it was the same for water and sanitation, and then the projected capital needs, and based on that you set a rate. So you can generate more in 1 year than what you spend, but you have to have a plan to spend that, and you don't ever want to spend it down to zero, because these enterprise funds are treated as almost separate entities, separate businesses, and so they need to be able to support and fund if there's ever a catastrophe or an emergency.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Zanoni? Thank you, Bill. At this time, we'll open up the public hearing. Anybody wishing to speak to the budget for the fiscal year 2015-16, please do so at this time. Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Nancy Vinson, and I am the AFSCME representative. I represent the miscellaneous and the clerical units. First thing I want to say is kudos to this city. You know, good job. I applaud you for staying alive and solvent during some very tough years. So, I mean, that was a yay for you. And also applaud you for making at least a couple of really good decisions. One of them is Mr. Zanoni. I think he's great. And the other actually is Stacey Henderson. In our bargaining with her, she was outstanding, fair, just, a really good person. I'm not here tonight to attack anyone personally, or even to really attack your budget. I have a concern about what I think are misplaced priorities. You balance your budget every year, and have for the past few years, with 10% of our members' money. They're doing the furloughs, that's equal to 10%. So you begin at that point, saying, this is what it will cost us for salaries. When you end up in a position where there's anything left over, it sounds like the general fund isn't, but there are some new monies being moved around, there are some positions that are being funded a little bit higher, there are some allocations for things that are contained in this budget. So when you find yourself in a position to do that, to me, it's really poor form for anything to happen in favor of management and not do something about giving the employees back what they have given you for 2 years. They didn't choose to do it. They didn't want to do it. They'd be happy to have it back, and your encumbrance would be greater had you never taken it. So they get it. They have played along. They have adjusted their lives. They're really dedicated to the city. I'm really impressed with them because they don't trash you ever. They always have good things to say about your leadership and about how they feel about their jobs. But at this point, it just seems just sort of summarily unfair to advance anyone unless it's going to improve the operation of the city. So if you have people in place who are in a position and performing a certain function, even if that's, you know, greater than what they maybe ought to be, if it's working, it's working. And it's in poor form to do something to advance anyone like that unless it's really going to improve the function of the city. Maybe a part-timer to full-time that may be able to, you may be able to meet your mandates and do a whole lot better. But there's really just an objection to all of that. Again, I really am not here to criticize or to say your budget is horrid. I just think that it is just summarily unfair not to make the employees whole first and then go from there. I kind of laughed when I was talking to one of your managers. I said, look, if you can just give them all a subway card and that's all you can do, great, do that instead of giving extra money to other people right now. This sounds terrible, but it kind of reminds me of the federal money that went to the banks. And it was supposed to make everyone whole. It was supposed to do something to improve the economy and to help the people of America who were struggling in a bad economy, bad real estate. They didn't do that. They kept it. They had parties. They gave themselves big bonuses. That's not what you're doing. I'm not accusing you of that. But it's kind of, in a way, similar to that. When you give something to the people who are in the higher positions and you don't first take care of the little guy who are the bees in your hive. If you don't have the bees in your hive crumbles. And, I recognize what they do. I know you recognize what they do, but sometimes that's best said by making them whole and doing what you can for them first, showing them that they are your priority. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. And I do agree with you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to the budget? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the council. Anyone have any further comments or questions? Mr. Raymond.
I just have one more question for Mr. Zanoni, if that's okay.
Sure.
I know you said that we're having to borrow from the enterprise fund for some of the general fund payments because of the deficit, the cash deficit that we have. Do you have a dollar amount or an estimated dollar amount for what it is we're borrowing?
For what, the general total?
Yes.
For all of the funds?
Yes, sir.
About $8.8 million between the general fund, the water fund, and the sanitation fund.
Okay, and so that is money that we're also going to have to pay back to the water fund as it goes on, correct?
The water fund will pay back to the sewer fund. The sanitation fund will pay back to the sewer fund and general fund, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, well, I just want to sum up that we are trying. When we all came to the council, we knew that we were in a whole lot of trouble budgetary-wise. We're still not out of the woods on that, as is evident by the reports that we're all receiving. There are things that are in the mill, inquiries, things of that nature that are coming, hopefully coming, and all that in time, we hope that they will help to alleviate some of this debt load that we have on our shoulders here and make things better, much better. I think it's important for everybody to also know we recognize the fact that this city and the people that make it work, all the clerical workers, all the police, all the fire, everybody that works for this city are doing Herculean effort to make sure everything works at a personal sacrifice. We understand that. So we're not, going to keep these things, going as they are forever. Obviously, we want to make things whole again. So understand, your voices are being heard, and we recognize that. And I personally want to thank each and every one of the people that work for this city, and understand that I also echo the same sentiments that so many throughout have said to me, employees that is, that were it not for people like the guy on my right and the gal on my left, that this city wouldn't be functioning as it is. And there's nothing I can say that can be said that can say it stronger, that we are going to make it through these dark days, and it's going to happen. I just don't have a timeline. Boy, if I had that kind of a thing, I'd be running right down to the local 7-Eleven and getting a lottery ticket, let me tell you. But it's going to happen, and so, any case, I'll entertain a motion. Pro Tem Bergman.
Thank you, Mayor. I've heard Ms. Vinson's words loud and clear, and I echo her sentiments. I've always been pro-employee. If it weren't for the employees we had, this city wouldn't be still surviving like it is. I know there's inequities, and I know we have to address them. And I just want the employees to know that I'm going to do everything I can in the future to address those, because you, like I said, without employees like you, we wouldn't be surviving like we are. Having said that, I know there's some different feelings on what we've got here, but I will move to adopt joint authority resolution number 2829-15, resolution number AFPD 3-2015, and resolution number SA 2015-5 to adopt the 2015-16 fiscal year budget. And I'm going to stop before I get too much more tongue-tied.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Vineyard. Call for the question.
Did you say call for the question? Okay. Raymond?
No.
Vineyard?
Yes.
Bergman?
Yes.
Price?
Yes.
Motion carries. Resolution authorizing submittal of 2015 JAG program grant application.
Mr. Petro.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council, again this year, like we've had in the past, is a time that our grants manager applies for the Edward Burns Memorial Justice Assistant Grant Program, the JAG grant. We've done this before our grants manager came aboard. I did it for the last probably 12 years. So this is $12,000 this year. The allocation, there's no match. And this year, we would like to purchase new tasers. Our tasers are about 11, 12 years old. We can't get them repaired, no parts. So at this point in time, this grant, we'd be able to pick up 12 tasers with this dollar amount. So it's recommended the City Council open a public hearing, take any testimony. There's also a sign-up around. I'd appreciate if everybody would sign up on the sign-up sheet that the lieutenant's going around. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for City Manager Pietro? Okay, this is, I'm sorry, Mr. Vineyard.
Just the longevity of the tasers that you're purchasing, is there a number of years that they're supposed to be good for?
8.
8, okay, thank you.
Shocking. Okay, this is public hearing. Open a public hearing for anyone that wishes to come forward and speak to this matter. Please come to the podium, state your name for the record. Seeing none, close the public hearing. Bring it back to the council for comment. Entertain a motion.
Motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Call for the question.
Vineyard,
Yes.
Bergman,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Price.
Yes.
Motion carries. Reports and presentations from staff. Police Department activities and projects for the month of May 2015.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is for May of 2015. Our calls for service for the month were 2,409. Our bookings were 172. We issued 86 citations, moving violations. We had 70 thefts. We had 38 traffic collisions, 28 assaults, 15 stolen vehicles, and 14 burglaries. The notable cases for the month, on the 10th of May, officers received a call of a shooting at 2355 Atwater Boulevard, a victim of a shooting. A victim was located with multiple gunshot wounds. He was eventually transported to hospital where he succumbed to his injuries. The investigation is ongoing with detectives as we speak. On the 7th of May, we had a subject walk in the 1500 block of East Bellevue Road, or in the area of the 1500 block of East Bellevue Road. At that time, he was struck by a motorist, and he succumbed to his injuries as well. On the 17th of May, we had officers respond to another motor vehicle accident on Alabama and Bellevue. During that investigation, it was discovered that the driver of the vehicle was under the influence, and the passenger in the vehicle in which the driver was under the influence had passed away or succumbed to his injuries. The driver was eventually arrested for manslaughter, charged with manslaughter. On the 17th also, we had officers attempting to take a subject in custody for multiple warrants. Subject had fled on foot, resulted in a foot chase. As a result of the foot chase, subject was eventually taken into custody, and no injuries were reported on that one. On the 29th, officers responded to a vehicle collision on the area of Juniper and First Street. It was discovered during that one we had children involved that were injured. Eventually, it was discovered that the father of the children who was driving under the influence, and he was eventually arrested for felony child endangerment and drunk driving. On the 25th, officers got into a vehicle pursuit of a stolen vehicle. During the incident, the suspect vehicle had crashed, and the suspect then went into a foot pursuit, and the officers eventually caught him, and he placed him under arrest for the chase and stolen vehicle as well as outstanding warrants. And that's for the month of May.
You've had an interesting month of May.
Yeah.
And an interesting couple of days, too, seeing one individual that, well.
It's been busy. I'll give you that story next month.
A two-timer right there. Yeah, that was interesting. Are there any questions or comments for Lieutenant Joseph? Again, my heartfelt thanks for all the officers for the job they do. Thank you.
Fire Department activities and projects for the month of May 2015.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, citizens of Atwater, your fire department has ran a total of 324 calls for the month of May. 8 structure fires, 27 other fires, 21 vehicle accidents, 244 medical aids, 5 hazmat hazardous conditions, and 19 public service assists. Weed abatements, properties that were inspected, we had 74 properties that were inspected, and then 7 were abated by contractors. As far as hydrant inspections, again, we want to reassure that we're just looking at the hydrants. We're making sure that the caps will be removed properly, that we could actually turn the quarter turn of getting the valve open, but we were able to complete 30 of those the last month. Public educations, we had 4 public educations. Business inspections was 35, and then training sessions, we had 16 hours worth of training, or 16 training sessions. With that, we had a PIO class that a couple of the individuals were working on, and then our round robin training around with the other county personnel and equipment. As far as the reserve program, there was no activity with the reserve program. We had a vegetation fire back in the beginning of the month over off of Sycamore, just at the end of Sycamore, and there was a large field there. The evening hours, both engines responded with the assistance of the county's Station 63 out of Winton. Upon arrival, we had a vegetation fire approximately an acre and a half. With the drought conditions, the individuals were able to use fire and light the field and actually contain the field and burn off all the vegetation. I know a lot of people had noticed some of the techniques that the firefighters were using in sense of why did you just let it burn? Well, during our training through the drought and everything, we've decided that this is going to be a more effective process. This was no range area or feed for livestock, so what they were done is actually burned off the vegetation, didn't use any water in the process, and was able to keep the damage to a minimum. As far as the month of May, that was the report for the fire department. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Any questions for Battalion Chief Humantel? Mr. Vineyard.
Are you going to have any type of more public information officer training or anything?
We're working through the OES office out there with Chief Ron, and they wanted to do this one class first, and then he was going to get back to adding additional classes. We had 2 of our representatives, Captain Overbay and Engineer Richard Freitas, that attended that class.
Is there something that you might have or packet that I could provide the volunteers so that they have some idea of if we're doing something assisting you in road blockage or something that if they get questions, they can provide proper information to the public?
Yeah,
that you might be able to give me that I can pass on. I'll work with Chief
Ron and see if there is kind of a handout or a type of pamphlet that kind of the suggested key points that may be able to assist them. I'll get something to you within the next month.
Thank you.
Mark, what types of hazardous material spills? I noticed this month 5, last month 4, 7, and so on, going back to the first of the year. What type of things are you seeing in those types of spills?
Some of those are also concerning with CO monitors, those CO monitors that are going off in the residence. So we'll make access into their properties. We'll use our monitors and make sure that the residence is clear. Other things would be such as diesel spills, vehicle accidents that diesel, a certain amount of diesel will come out. And what they're actually going for anymore, it used to be a number of 50 gallons or greater, but now it's any type of diesel spill. So we make the notifications and that would become a hazardous condition. So those are basically the incidents that we responded to with that.
Okay, very good. Any other questions for Chief Pimentel? Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
CAL FIRE contract for fire services for fiscal year 2015-16 and fiscal year 2016-17.
Chief Pimentel. As soon as we get the audio visuals
council members,
going.
just as soon as we get this up, a quick presentation in regards to our agreement. It seems like we were just last year, we were right here at the same spot talking about the agreement. Last agreement was consistent of a 2-year agreement. To backtrack some of the years before where we were working out of an agreement. This year we're doing the same thing. We're going to go for another 2-year agreement, working with the city. MMU, the unit has been requested by your staff to come forth with an agreement proposal for the city of Atwater and CAL FIRE. CAL FIRE provides a full service, high professional trained fire protection and rescue services to the city of Atwater. We've done that since 2008 of October. The agreement with CAL FIRE is very beneficial for both fiscally and administratively by providing a regional approach to fire protection that brings an outside level of service to the citizens inside, both inside and the adjacent areas of the city of Atwater. Cooperative agreement details. The city council maintains a local identity. They control the level of service, the budget, and the funding for the fire protection within the city of Atwater provided by CAL FIRE. Again, once we were going to the budget meetings, we've met hand in hand, discussed the staffing levels that you required, is that you would like to have CAL FIRE provide. At that point, this is where we come together and we proposed CAL FIRE's agreement to the budget, and that's where we come up with our overall agreement. Atwater City retains ownership, control, and responsibilities to replace all rail properties, assets, and equipment. So such as we come across as your stations, Station 41 off of Broadway, Station 42 off Avenue 2 by the Buhack Colony High School. Those are Atwater City's fire stations. The equipment, the fire engines there, such as the ladder truck that we've spent numerous hours working with you on, that is the city of Atwater's piece of equipment. That is your city. So it's not CAL FIRE's, it's for the city of Atwater and your fire department. As far as the level of service administration, the agreement is managed by CAL FIRE, the unit chief, Chief Corporage, as the city of Atwater's fire chief. The fire chief is assisted by the division chief year-round, but the city only funds 2 months for the division chief spot. 2 months is kind of an idea. It's actually a little less because it was a 0.2% within the agreement, but roughly around about 2 months. Currently, under the direction of the fire chief and the management of the division chief, the daily administrative responsibilities and duties conducted by 1 1/2 battalion chiefs. Now, with this agreement, we've increased that to 2 1/2. It has including that other battalion chief, but the past agreement we were at 1 1/2. That would be my position, and the other half would be the other battalion chief that would cover on the other end of the week when I'm not around. The duties, corporation of the city, the Atwater staff, we coordinate with the city of Atwater staff, routinely administrative fire staff supervision, fire prevention and planning, investigation, and command of the incidents within the city. Due to the workload of the BC battalion chief, their level of service, the fire chief is requesting to increase the BCs from the current to the 2 1/2 positions to assist with the administrative, fire prevention, and planning duties within the city. The additional BC will include responding for coverage, and they will provide fire marshal duties within the city. This individual will work closely with Mr. Peretta in the development process. As the new businesses come in here, they will start handling more of those, and I'll obviously be handling more of the inspections that occur in the city. So not necessarily will you have a piece of apparatus with 2 bodies go into these residents to do the inspections. You'll have this one individual that will go there majority of the time. Not saying that the 2 individuals will not assist this person when it needs be, but this individual will be mostly handling that on his own. And then again, along with the weed abatement process, using the staff for assistance, but mainly will fall for that fire marshal's duties. Operating positions, division chief covers 1 day per week. The battalion chief covers from 4.5 days, is now going to move up to 7 days a week. Communication operator, you have 1.5, it's 5 days per week. We have 4 fire captains and 5 engineers that work in the city. Many of the services received to the city of Atwater with no cost through the Cooperative Fire Protection Agreement with CAL FIRE include the fire chief administration, the division chief covering above the 20% pay, additional 1 day of battalion chief emergency response coverage, law enforcement and investigation services, safety officer, and training officer to complete mandatory training. So any of this kind of training and stuff like that these individuals continually go to, the city doesn't pay for that individual to maintain that. They cooperate with the CAL FIRE, and we'll make sure those individuals stay up to date on their training and work through their law enforcement. Obviously, we have a law enforcement bureau that we used to go to. That used to be my previous job that I went to. From before accepting the job here, they'll come down here on certain incidents, and will help with the investigation process of any kind of incident with a large-scale incident within the city of Atwater. Recommendations, we're recommending the additional battalion chief or fire marshal officer who manages business and apartment building inspection programs and maintains inspection records, supports schools and local services groups, requests for safety officer presentations, manages the weed abatement program, fireworks booths, and safety and safe and sane programs, and develops and maintains the city's disaster planning services. And obviously, I've got to show a picture of the truck because we're so excited about the truck, even though it's on its way. So hopefully, we'll be here within the next month. But if there was any questions, that pretty much covers the agreement. If you have any questions, I'll be more happy to answer.
Are there any questions for Chief Pimentel? I have still the issue with the division chief line item. To be perfectly honest with you, it gives me a little bit of maybe I'll just leave it alone. But it's just one of those positions that for what we're spending and what we're getting, I don't know. I have an issue with that. So, in any case.
Mr. Mayor, how would you like us to address it? I know we've talked about it previously as maybe more of an attendance visual of seeing the individual. How would you prefer us to
well, let me ask you this. Chief Capone, how do you feel, or what would you describe as your position?
As the fire chief?
About you.
Oh, as the unit chief. So the unit chief is responsible for all of the day-to-day workings in all of the agreements and all of the state mission. But the unit chief can't do that. It's the same thing as the mayor. The mayor's not going to be out there and signing paychecks and that kind of stuff. So you have a staff that does that. My staff in the fire department is a paramilitary organization, and so there's a hierarchy for that staff. And there is for the city of Atwater as well. So because the unit chief is expected to run all of the state mission as well as the oversight for all of the cooperative agreements, there's no way I can be the supervisor for Chief Pimentel and your new battalion chiefs every day. So that's where the division chief comes in. So for what you're basically paying for 2 months of your division chief, but you have that division chief year-round. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, very recently when we were talking about the third story implementation within the city, Chief Lawson, your division chief, and Chief Pimentel worked with Scott McBride to work on a process for that. I tasked that division chief to come in here and provide that. So he does the day-to-day supervision for your battalion chief and then any additional responsibilities that I give him. But I will say that I do take I'm personally attached to the city of Atwater, and so that's why I come to your meetings and I answer your questions. It's just started because this is my 5th year, and I kind of take that personal responsibility. I certainly am willing, and I explained this earlier, certainly willing to have the division chief come here, but I kind of thought you guys liked seeing me, so that's why I come. But I'm happy to bring the division chief to the meetings and have him meet with you.
I appreciate that. You kind of said what, you're a lot more visible. That's kind of where I'm at. And anyway.
I will tell you that prior management requested our division chief not to be here. So that was kind of I was still working under that rule.
Okay. Well, you don't have to necessarily.
Okay. We're happy to correct that.
I appreciate that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions of either of the chiefs? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to adopt Joint Authority Resolution 2824-15 and Resolution AFPD 2-2015 approving a corporate fire program.
Second.
Call for the question.
Vineyard?
Yes.
Bergman?
Abstain.
Raymond?
Yes.
Price?
Yes.
Motion carries. Approval of proposed third-story development and project-specific mitigation payment for Microtel N.
Chief Pimentel, we're going to hear a lot from you tonight. Go ahead.
Yes, Mayor. Mayor, City Council, citizens of Atwater. About 2014, myself and Mr. McBride came up with an ordinance to exceed the 35-foot threshold for structures built within the city of Atwater, or otherwise known as the third story. During this process, we developed 17.44.120 development standards. The building height, just going straight to it, C, which would be building heights not to exceed the 2 1/2 stories above the grade. 35-foot height exceptions. The building height may be exceeded with approval of City Council after due consideration of the professional opinion of the fire chief. We have reviewed the plans and we've worked with the building developers and Mr. McBride in the process of developing a mitigation payment to help maintain the service that the council and the city of Atwater has provided for such of a structure. We were moved forward in acquiring the apparatus, the 109-foot quint. So in this process of actually developing, getting that on board so that we can handle incidents with structures of this magnitude, we believe that it was going to be in the right minds of actually having a mitigation fee to sustain and continue services of that apparatus and future growth of the city. During the process, I worked on the equipment itself as the apparatus, the overall cost of that apparatus, the cost of the equipment, and then also incorporating maintenance and upkeep of that apparatus and the station that would be responding to where this structure would be built. Incorporating that, putting that together, we thought it would be a fair idea of doing a 3%. And an overall cost of 3% would be roughly 90 cents per square foot of that structure. That being coming out to $26,944 would go to the fiscal, the capital's fund for the fire department. Like I said, working with those developers, I've actually been in conversations with them prior to submitting of the staff report and then again afterwards, and they seem to be on board. So we came to the council today to say that we do approve, with this mitigation, we do approve the third story and having this project move forward. If you have any questions, we'd be more than happy to answer.
Any questions for Chief Pimentel? Well, the only comment I'd like to make with respect to previous council's judgment on this is that, in my mind, this is a speed bump. It just kind of slows down the process, and perhaps we can explore how, in a case such as this, where you, Mr. McBride, and anybody else in the planning and procurement process for a facility such as this can just move ahead without coming back for something as an approval like we're up against right now. You said, you know, what I am thinking also with respect to the how high, you know, the new engine will rise. It's far above the 3 stories that we're talking about right here. So that's you know, if we're going to hold to the idea that this is going to help to encourage and enhance our economic picture, then we need to look at this as something that from now on it can already be assumed that you can move forward and make these things happen and not have to hold up and wait for a council to approve that. Mr. Vineyard.
Okay, just looking at this is specifically for this motel, correct?
That's affirmative.
But
Yes,
this actually could be utilized for Super Walmart, Super Target. You could use a similar formula for width, largeness rather than height.
Not necessarily. The actual key point to this, and Mr. McBride can correct me if I'm wrong, but the third story is what gets us to this point right now.
Okay.
Anything as far as a single story stays within that threshold, and we don't really get to this point here. So this is one of the first of hopefully many that we'll be revisiting, but at some point we are going to work as a fire department with the city to develop a more appropriate set of funds and fees, or however you want to portray that at a later date.
Excellent. That's where I was kind of going, so we could expand on those.
Yes,
so we don't have
this
to,
should help us expand.
As I agree, a speed bump, but this is specific for 3 stories and above. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And to be clear, should another hotel, we'll say for conversation's sake, come back here again, you would have to do what we're doing right now, would we not?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's my point, is that, you know, if we can just leave it in the process for doing whatever Mr. McBride needs to do, whatever you have to do, and have it in a resolution, an ordinance, whatever it is that we have to modify, I would like to see that we could do something like that and get it done. Just get it done, because I can't see how this can be a very business-friendly type of a thing if we don't do that.
We could do that. We'll definitely work on that for the later date if something
Very
does
good.
come up
Thank you
soon.
so much. Mr. Raymond.
I know this is going to be a somewhat rhetorical question because I can read the item in front of me here. This 80 cents for this 3rd story per square foot is strictly for the Microtel Inn, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the owner who you've been meeting with, you and Ms. McBride have been meeting with, are 100% on board with paying this money?
That's what they've explained to me. They've seen my staff report. I sent that to them before I actually submitted it to the city. And they called me that evening and said they liked our process. They thought it was a very fair and equal process, and they liked how it was developed, and they were in agreement with it. To my knowledge, I don't have nothing in formal writing from the developer themselves, but that was the phone call that I received from the developer.
And also, Mr. Zanoni, you may be, or city manager, one or the other here, what is our TOT tax?
Scott, I think it was 8 or 12. I think it's 8. I think it's 8.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm just hopeful that this is going to be another something that, you know, just continues to go on. This is significant money, and for those, TOT is the transient occupancy tax, and all of that money that's generated by way of any rooms that are rented out through any hotels, that money stays right here in the community, period. It doesn't go anywhere. And that's a significant amount of money. The more hotels that you have on board, it's significant cash. So hopefully that'll be something we can see more in the future. Mr. Vineyard.
I'll move for the approval of the proposed 3rd story development and project-specific mitigation pavement Microtel Inn.
Second.
First and second, call for the question.
Raymond?
No.
Vineyard?
Yes.
Bergman?
Yes.
Price?
Yes.
Motion carries. Public Works Department activities and projects for the month of May 2015? Oh. Okay, we'll just move to the next agenda. Verbal report regarding AB 2188 permitting process for rooftop solar energy systems.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Mark Pareda, Chief Building Official, City of Atwater, and this is regarding a Senate bill, actually Assembly Bill AB 2188. It's another non-funded state mandate that we all get to have, and this is statewide. So basically what this is telling all building divisions is we got to have a expedited process for solar voltaics. So if somebody comes in and hands me some plans, I have to give them expedited service. Some bigger districts are going to be able to do it over the counter because they're going to have dedicated plan checkers just for this. We don't have that capability here. So I have developed a system and coordinates with this particular assembly bill that's going to will be put on our website that they can design to. I'm still have to check them when I get back out from the field. So our version of expedited service is going to be 1 day turnaround. More than likely, after I get out of back in from the field and taking care of my administrative stuff, then I'm going to start doing plan checking at night in order to get this done. But it's either that or we hire somebody to stay here and wait for solar people to come in, solar contractors to come in and do it at the counter. And that's not feasible. So, but that, I'm just introducing it tonight. Here in the coming weeks, you'll see the staff reports, and you'll start seeing the bullet points of what they're going to be designing to. So, any questions?
Are there any questions? Well, in the
Ask
States...
it, Mayor, ask it.
You know what I'm going to say, don't you? How many of these are we seeing now? I know the popularity of solar installation is, it seems to be really escalating.
Yeah.
So how much is this going to be an impact on your office?
With this, it's hard to foresee right now. Our solar permitting has quadrupled in the last year and a half. So matter of fact, we had one particular contractor just today drop off for 7 permits. And we have multiple contractors who do 2, 3. Sometimes we've had, our record so far is one contractor doing 11 permits at one time. And so it all depending.
So for you, in a typical day, how many can you do?
Plan checking or?
Yeah, well, whatever it is.
Inspections. Well, plan checking, currently my process is I get in early in the morning before people start coming in, and I do my plan checking. It's either that or I do it at night and stay late at night to get it done. As far as inspections are concerned, we're averaging, I would say, anywhere from 6 to 8 solar inspections a day. Sometimes it's, I know I've got at least 8 solar inspections tomorrow. And so it is, we are really, really busy with it. It's, you know, it is what it is. With this new legislation, it's going to put a heavy burden on myself and my staff, which is just Stephanie. So, but I don't have any choice. It is mandated. I have to follow it. So again, we're going to be tinkering with the website on the Building Divisions tab, and we're going to put this all down. And because somebody's got to review it and somebody's got to stamp it and approve it, I can't have my permanent technician, because she's not trained to do such a thing. So it has to be reviewed by a certified plan checker or somebody that knows how to do it, and I'm the only one in my office that does. So,
aside from solar, is there any projects that are being delayed as a result of this?
No. That's part of the reason why I go in extra early and stay extra late. That way we keep things rolling.
You have the coffee made so that Mr. Brickbride has something when he comes in the morning?
I don't drink decaf. I'm wired as for sound as it is naturally. So, but to give you an example, last year was our best year in 6 years. And from January 1st to January 31st, we issued 173 permits.
Solar?
No, permits in general.
Permit in general, okay.
This year, we're at 292 in the same time period. And so, and for 2 people, that is, it's nuts. It really, it's burdensome, but we do it. We do it the best we can. So, but I just wanted to again introduce this to you because it's going to be fun. I don't know, and there's other. It's just not City of Atwater. I've got other districts that are similar in size and staffing. And we're communicating that they don't know how they're going to do it either. You know, you just do the best you can.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Okay, understand. Councilmember Vineyard?
Yeah, just, is the solar permit any different? Is there a standard permit, or is there certain?
Basically, yeah, more our photovoltaic permits that we have are normally going to be roof-mounted units. When it gets a little bit more complicated is when it's a standalone unit. When somebody puts it in the backyard, or if they have a fairly big, decent chunk of land, like we're putting around City Hall and places like that, that takes more engineering on it. So it would take me a little longer to do as far as plan check, because there's more codes that I have to double check on at that particular point. I can usually go through a plan check on the photovoltaic in about, now if everybody keeps everything down and uses, I already have a punch list that I already give out all my contractors. City of Atwater, I developed something about 2.5 years ago through the solar initiative that was based out of Fresno and that we got awarded for. So we're kind of way ahead on the curve. I knew that this was coming on down the pike because they're using the solar initiative as using it statewide. So we've kind of been above, what's been happening there locally. But an average permit plan check is about 15 to 20 minutes in order to do it, because you got to check the calculations and there's some technical stuff you got to just make sure that they're doing. And so you get 11 of them, it adds up real quick. So, and but you just got to handle it. That's what it is.
Thanks.
And there's no flex in this at all to
actually
I
this
understand that you have other things other than solar projects. I mean, there's, life goes on with other things.
There's those of us who testified at the Calbo meeting in Monterey on this particular, and this is the flexible. Up until then, it was mandated that if you didn't have somebody, you had to hire somebody or contract somebody in to do it and have them at the counter. There was no flexibility about it. The truth of the matter is the Energy Commission has got a lot of pull right now, and they have a lot of money, and those particular contractors who come up to the plate on their behalf are photovoltaic companies. And so they got this, and this falls in line with the governor's solar initiative also. They wanted so many photovoltaics on the roofs by a certain amount of time, and this falls in line with that. And it's just been exacerbated over as these years have been. So it's not a bad thing. Solar's great. It's just how it affects a small unit or a small city like this it can be overwhelming sometimes.
Well, saving the earth on their timeline and ours is a different thing, I guess. But,
yeah.
In any case. Are there any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. Appreciate the briefing.
City Council matters. City Council comments and requests for future agenda items.
We'll start with Mr. Raymond.
One thing I'd like to look at doing for the next agenda would be possibly relocating the stop sign on Fruitland and Orchard Park. It's kind of a pointless stop sign. It would be more usable at like the Fruitland and Kansas area. And also I would like to propose a balanced budget resolution for the city to ensure that we don't spend any more than we have. It will hold us accountable. It will hold future council members accountable, and it will ensure that we start bringing forth a path of prosperity for our kids, for the future generations. And that's something I think is sorely needed. We've done a good job the last couple of years, but we need to make sure it continues.
Okay. Pro Tem Bergman.
Thank you, Mayor. When Mr. Pacheco got up earlier and talked about the disabled vets wanting to take care of the parks, I think that's a great idea. I just would like to see that brought on the next agenda to make sure there's no legal issues with that, and see maybe we could start a program where we can have groups like that helping out and taking care of things. The other thing is, we just discussed this issue with impact fees on the microtel. I'd like to see if staff could work on something and bring back maybe an updated fee schedule. So like you said, Mayor, we do have something in place. So when we don't have to deal with this every time we got a new plan or plans or something coming into the city.
Right. Okay. Mr. Vineyard.
Yes, I'd like to put on the agenda a discussion about putting all the staff reports back on the consent calendar. I'm sure we're going to have more issues that are going to maybe extend. This was probably a enigma that we went this short. But I think putting those back on the consent calendar, if we have questions, we can pull them off. The copies of those reports can be put in the back of the room for anybody that's in the room. If anybody in TV land wants to pull them, they can pull them from the website. I just think the staff has more important issues and then get up and regurgitate what we have in our packet. Also, I'd like to put on the agenda about the presentation of certificates. I think that's another item that we can move to the schools or to the associations. I think it would have a greater impact to present those certificates there than it would actually here. And it would, again, it would relieve some of the time constraints we have. Actually,
that's one item that Gina and I have already discussed. And coming to the next school year, that is something that I agree with you. It takes a lot of time. As you know, the last meeting was a long meeting, a lot of it taken up with ceremonial matters.
There are some special circumstances
I understand.
that are going to occur.
Right.
Most of those we can move.
Right.
One of us can attend those meetings.
Certainly. Yeah, when there's the awards banquets and things like this at the schools, and they all get involved, and I don't want to get into an issue where it's going to be a us against them type thing. We truly appreciate all the athletic achievements and the academic achievements that happen with all of the schools. But it does take a considerable amount of time, not just at the city council meetings, but also staff time in doing these things. So we're going to streamline that for the next school year and understand it's not a thing that we're trying to condemn anybody for that's doing these accomplishments. We will make sure that you're recognized in the proper form. So. With respect to water issues, we are going to be bringing back for review as mandated to take a look at the water issues. And this is something that anybody that knows me knows that this is something near and dear to my heart, and I am not going to let it go. As we progress, especially on days like today when we're punching 100 degrees, it's easy to see in a very short period of time who is and who is not watering lawns and what have you. Those that continue, two things that I have noticed in my touring around the city is that, first of all, you've got the plushest yard amongst a whole bunch of browns. So that's one thing. The other thing is that of those that I've noticed that are very plush, I also noticed that the sidewalks that are in front of them have a stain to them from excessive water continually going over them. And anybody that looks at them, you'll see where it's kind of a splotted kind of, just brown spots in the sidewalk where it's extra water has gone over that. I know we've had a lot of discussion with respect to education and that type of thing. And I don't know, guys, we're going to be coming back again, not the next meeting, but soon thereafter, where we're going to be discussing, how we're progressing and things relating to the water issue. And I think it's going to be extremely important that we come back and say, what more education can we do and will we do? It is something that we're going to have to get a grip on, and it's not getting any better when we still see the violations going on. So they're out there, and I just hope that we take it very, very seriously. I know we do, but we've got to make it clear to the community that we're all in this predicament together. So we'll do that. And lastly, we're going to adjourn this meeting tonight in the memory of former Mayor Rudy Trevino. As you all know, he unfortunately passed away here over the past couple of weeks. Anybody that knows any history between myself and Mr. Trevino knows that he and I crossed swords many a time. And, it was over a lot of different issues, but in the final analysis, Rudy and I didn't hold that. And there were several other people within the community. And that's, let me tell you something, you know, there's a lot of things that I personally picked up from Rudy. And during the campaign, he was very supportive, and he was, you know, he really liked sharing his knowledge and his experiences. And speaking for myself, I am truly going to miss Rudy Trevino. Just a great, great guy. Never held back, knew it, and I'll tell you, if he knew, well, he knows. You know, one of the things that Rudy always talked about was, well, geez, now we're going to talk about this guy like he was back then, but now we're going to praise him in death, you know. Well, so be it. You know, I'll praise him and his memory. He is a great guy. And I, for one, I'm going to miss him. And I know that Councilmember Raymond, you were in particular very, very close with Rudy and to his family and to Burma and all of his kids and his grandkids and all of his friends. We'll adjourn tonight's meeting in the memory of a great guy, Rudy Trevino. This meeting is adjourned to closed session.
Amen.